Humans, the cardboard. If you are a control / mid-range player in Yu-Gi-Oh, you're going to want to keep an eye on this video. Today we're talking about my 5 favorite future options as it pertains to control / mid-range players. I know that's such a blurred category nowadays because there are a lot of combo decks that, with the Mulcharmies running around, like devolve into mid-range decks, and there are some decks that you could say is a control deck, but like, yes, it does have a 7-8 step combo, and so everything kind of ends up as a mid-range deck in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, but these ones to me are more in line with what we traditionally call control decks overall, in my sense. Even if you look at some of these decks and you're like, they still have a combo, I get it, but everything does. So I would definitely not call these decks combo decks at all. They're closer to control to me, but there's 5 really cool options here that are either getting support or either just have a nice niche in the future, in the upcoming formats, and I think you should definitely keep an eye on. So let's jump into those. Let's start with number 1, obviously on my list. Well, that's not it. Here we go. Number 1 for me is Elich, and this one's a little bit more fringe. Do I think Elich is going to be out of this world good? No, and it's not even solidified that it's going to take a huge leap, but we know about 1 or 2 pieces that are really nice for the deck, and they may potentially have more on the way, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But Elich, deck in the past, when it came out in its original set, it and Emancipator took over the format, and Elich was the premier control deck in the game. But its engine's been proven a little bit too slow as of late. But with cards like Delta of Temptation, that might be fixed somewhat. Not entirely, but Delta of Temptation is a really cool card for zombies. Being able to foolish any level 5 or higher zombie from deck to grave on activations, really solid. Zombies would rather be in grave than on field anyway. There's a couple other targets other than Elich, but obviously for this discussion, that's the main target. And then once per turn, if you already have a zombie on field, you can just summon a free token, which is really nice. And then also, if any monster is added from grave back to hand and this card's in grave, you can add it back, which, by the way, gets triggered by Elich the Golden Lord's secondary effect, which is really cool. So you can send the field spell on the field to the grave to add himself back and summon him, and then use the field spell's effect to get itself back. Or if you didn't want to summon Elich initially, you could then use the free field spell add back as a free pitch to then send a card on the field to the graveyard. So it really gets Elich in rotation pretty nicely. Does it fix the deck? Does it make it amazing? Not yet, but there's a couple of other things on the horizon as well. The first one is Double Wild. This is a new quick play spell. I made a whole video going on all the main relevant targets that exist for this card, but basically by targeting any level 5 or higher zombie, you could just add Elich to hand, and if you want to pitch an extra card with this, you could just summon Elich straight out of the deck. So that's really cool. That has some really good synergy there, potential there for a zombie build. And the last thing is, we've been low-key getting support for Elich this year already. Silhouette Rabbits come through, and can search all of the trap monsters in Elich, which are mainly a Conquistador and Hawkero, but those are still 2 pretty good targets there on top of some of the other generic targets as well. And the last thing I want to mention is Maze of the Master. So this is a set that we know basically everything for, aside from reprints, and the one unknown is Odeon's new trap monster deck. We have not seen any of the cards, we've just seen artwork for them, and to be honest, if this deck comes out and it's kind of revealed that the Odeon deck actually has synergy with just trap monsters in general, because that was Odeon's thing in the anime, we could actually see maybe even Eldritch gets to combine with those and get an even bigger boost there. So I think Eldritch is getting a bunch of tools all at once, and I think even has the potential to get even better than what the tools you've already seen. So keep that in mind. Eldritch is definitely a really interesting one. Next up, I have Infinitrack / Earth Machine, and you could even say Machina, like pure Machina. But I think for this purposes, we're talking Earth Machine mainly. I know some people may want to call this one combo because they do have some pretty heavy stepped, intuitive combos. But for me, their end board is usually 1 or 2 Exceed monsters. You draw 2, and that's it. Maybe the ability to put Machina or Machina Citadel on field. They really don't end on this big board with a bunch of interruptions. They're really just trying to be resource efficient, set up a grind game. That to me is indicative of a control deck, no matter how many steps it takes and how long the combo takes. So anyway, looking at the new stuff the deck gets, the first thing is Clockwork Knight. This deck now can search out the continuous spell Clockwork Knight with this guy, and even have ways to pitch that Clockwork Knight to search any card in the deck, basically, because that, like, Clockwork Knight, the spell searches any Earth Machine when it banishes itself from grave. So that's like a legit piece. And also being a generic link one that isn't just the Infinitrack link one could come up in certain combos as well. On top of that, Double Wild, like we talked about with Elich, is even better here because the targets are just better. Elich, searching Elich out is not bad, and summoning him as a big beater, sure, that's not bad either. But this card just searching and or summoning any level 10 Earth Machine is really, really strong. You have some really insane targets like Machina Citadel, where this card has always struggled because it has to be summoned by a card effect. Well, now that becomes even easier in this deck, and this card is just a straight up quick effect Raigeki on the field, so you don't have to feel bad about that. There's other level 10s too, like Bullet Train and Derricrane, I think are the names, that also are good extenders, good cards to get in rotation, use Exceed material and whatnot, put in the grave. There's multiple good targets here. So this card's a bigger piece of support. This to me feels like a really strong 3 of in the deck, for extension. And I think that's a pretty significant buff. But it's mainly those two. Those are really the two big pieces for me. But if you were an Earth Machine enjoyer, it feels like the deck's kind of gone away the last couple of months for sure, and maybe even this whole year. But maybe these are new tools that could actually get old Earth Machine players back into playing the deck again. So number 2 on my list, Machina. Which takes us to number 3, Pacifist. You guys know how much I've been talking about Pacifist. I've made quite a few videos referring to them. I think this deck's real. I really, really do. I've even been seeing deck lists in the OCG where, and I've talked about this when I've talked about this deck. The biggest thing about this deck is your opponent probably has a fourth of their deck minimum in some instances, depending on the matchup, is completely dead versus you. The Veilers, the Imperms, the Talents, the Thrusts, the Droplets, the Dark Rulers, Nib, all those cards are literally dead draws versus this deck. And so sometimes decks don't even have enough side-ins post game 1 to even make up for it, and they're still going to draw dead cards in game 2 and 3. And I think it leaves this deck in a really good position to take advantage of those situations where your opponent's only playing with a 3-card hand to start in most duels, and you can take advantage of that. So I think this deck's really cool. There's a couple new things. The biggest one is Primite, Another Barrel. It's a really good card for the Primite engine, which the deck's already been using lately. This card's really good because it's going to allow for the deck to grind a lot better. I found that in messing around with the deck, sometimes once you have to throw all your interruptions to keep your opponent from pushing into you with these crazy engines that modern day decks have, if you don't find a disgusting floodgate to sit on and hold your opponent down, if they get another turn, they might be able to finally push through with the grind that these decks have and their ability to push. They might push through, but Another Barrel really helps with the grind game. Getting itself back every turn where you get to set another spell or trap every turn, and the fact that it adds itself back and puts itself back on the field is really huge for Drill Beam as well, because Drill Beam can reset itself if you control a Primite monster, which at this point in time, we cannot abuse that ability to get Drill Beam back. And this is the most powerful payoff of the Primite engine in this deck anyway. So getting this back every turn and getting another set for another Primite card every turn really, really is nice for the grind game. Even if we don't find an auto-win floodgate, we can still win by just Drill Beaming every turn. That's going to be hard to push through. So I like it quite a bit. Which brings us to number 4, Marine Sess. This one, again, kind of another one similar to ABC, which we talked about in the combo version of this video, in that I think it's kind of gotten pushed to the wayside because of how long it's taken us to get it. That it was really hyped, and we were like, oh, if we get this in the next couple of months, that's going to be really awesome. Well, now we're getting it a whole year later, and so a lot of people have kind of fallen off the hype train. It's hard to stay hyped for something for a whole year like that, but we've seen some really cool things. The main card we're getting is Trickstar Aqua Angel. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is the main card we're talking about here, and it's a level 4 extender that's pretty flexible, and she gives you the ability to look at your opponent's hand, which is pretty important for Marine Sess. When you play a lower power, lower ceiling deck like Marine Sess, being able to look at the opponent's entire hand and get a vibe early, especially early in turns, on what hand traps they have, if any, and even if they don't, you can kind of this is a deck that relies on hand traps, so you know exactly where you want to be throwing your most impactful hand traps at choke points and stuff based on what you know about their hand. It really allows a lower impact deck, a lower ceiling deck like this to be more impactful overall into those matchups. And so I think this card's good, and even just being a level 4 water extender helps you make the Bahamut Toad lines a lot easier as well. And I wouldn't discount that either. So I think it's really cool. I'm even considering messing around with playing the Trickstar Field spell in Marine Sess, just because it searches her out and even has the added potential of going second, or in grind games going after back row as well, which can matter in the long run. So I think this is really, I think it's a really solid card, and I think it really helps them better, make them better. And the other thing too is Impulse. Impulse is like borderline one of the best new hand traps. Like it's on the short list of like top 3 or 4 best hand traps in the game now, and not every deck can play it, because any deck that needs lights, earths, or winds really can't afford to play it. But this deck doesn't really play lights, earths, and winds. This is one of those hard water decks, so this card probably takes the spot of another lesser hand trap, most likely Veiler or something. And this one's just more powerful and doesn't play into talents, yada yada. It's just a marginal thing that just makes your overall non-engine lineup just stronger overall, which I like. So Marine Sess for me, definitely in there. And the last one is Dragon Maid, which I didn't pull up here because I'm kind of a buffoon, but luckily I did set aside the leaks. So some of the leaks, we don't know if these are true or not. These are just things that have been rumored. They seem like they might be true because the Orcus ones ended up being correct, and I think these have been leaked by the same people. But until we have them officially confirmed, we can't say for sure, but we still know 2 cards are coming just from the OCG's Quarter Century Trinity box. So what the rumored leak is these 2 cards, a new fusion that takes 2 Dragon Maid monsters with the same attributes but different levels. So basically, we're talking about the main deck low-level Dragon Maid and its bigger Dragon Maid form in the main deck as well. So if you get them on field or in grave, you can just banish the cards from one each. Sorry, you can banish 1 from your field and your graveyard to make it. They can't both be in grave, but as long as you have 1 and the other's in grave, you can make this card really easily. And then on summon, it summons any level 4 lower Dragon Maid from the deck. Insanely powerful, because if you started with either like Kitchen or Chamber, which are like the better normal summons, Parlor's actually a pretty good normal summon too. You're able to just get another one in rotation and just keep, you know what I mean, get extra value. And then its other effect, which is during the standby phase, you can just fusion summon a fusion monster by shuffling the materials mentioned on it from your graveyard or banish into the deck, which means even the 2 monsters you banish to summon it, those are your cost, basically, what you're shuffling in just to fusion summon into Shao, basically. Super free. It also makes this card really resilient to hand traps, or if you summon this card and your opponent feels like they really want to Ash it, Impermanent Veiler, whatever, Impulse it even, as long as they don't remove this card, then you go, okay, pass. And then on their standby, you're still summoning Shao and like just setting up for future turns. It's really strong. I think this card's really good for the deck. Raises the ceiling, raises your ability to play through Interruption. I really think this card's really solid for the deck. The other card is finally a good dragon form of Chamber. So this card, basically what it does to work with Chamber as a dark dragon target, you can discard this card to reborn a Dragon Maid from Banish or Grave. It's really solid. That's really all they needed. They just needed an actual playable form of Chamber, and that's exactly what they got. All the other effects are mainly just it's classic, tag out for the Chamber and I guess the other level 4s. So like that's fine. This is exactly what they wanted. This is a 1 of or 2 of maybe, but a solid card for the deck, and they both just fill very necessary holes the deck was looking for. So I really feel like the deck's in a really good spot. We also have gotten Bestials. Dragon Maid didn't spend a ton of time with Bestials before they fell off the map in terms of power creep, so Bestials are only going to help here. And this is a deck that just can really play this control game where they're just rotating so many resources every turn. They're not making a million interruptions, but they grind so hard, and they're able to fit a ton of non-engine because Bestials already are sort of non-engine in a lot of matchups, and just you'll still probably have 15 hand trap slots if you want, aside from those Bestials cards. So I think the deck's in a really good spot. I'm really excited to kind of mess around with them going forward again. Oh, and the other one is those fusion dragons. I didn't even put it on here, but I think it's Dark End Evaporation Dragon. That's the better of the two. It's just a free dragon body, so can't even just help you make spheres, but also just summoning it then can just perform a fusion summon. And even pop a card going second. So actually some really good utility to help fuse you into other Dragon Maid and other boss monsters there as well. So really, really good options. I really think this deck's in a cool spot. I think it's slept on. I had a lot of people tell me that it's way worse than Orcust and Punk right now. And maybe that's true, because those decks have been maybe a little more relevant, a little more recent. But I think the support's pretty nutty, so I think they could actually be a player legitimately, at least on the rogue level, going forward as a fun control deck option. So there you go. Those are my 5 options. If you're a control player like me, this is my preferred list from these lists that I'm going to do. Yeah, just check them out. Even if it's not your necessary cup of tea, you might want to just take a look into it, see how these decks are going to play with their new cards. And maybe you come out of this with a deck looking forward to, where maybe because you see one of these and you want to play it going forward, pick up the cards early, save some money, pick up the cards so you don't have to worry about the headache later on, whatever, and then you just have to get the new cards when they drop, and you're good to go. So I love doing these videos. They're really fun. I'm really looking forward to these 5 decks specifically. Let me know what you guys are too. There might have been some other like rogue mid-range / control options that you could have that you thought might have been on this list that are getting new stuff down the line. Let me know your thoughts down below on that, what you think should have made the list, that you think is another good option. Of course, I'm always curious to see what you guys are thinking there. But I'm out of here for today. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel for more updates on news, more discussion videos, deck profiles, all that stuff, Yu-Gi-Oh! Down the line. And peace.